right, technology. And that's an external person that's coming in to deliver that presentation. And after that, there's going to be time for you to actually try out the board and then also just kind of mingle and network. So hopefully that will be a good time as well. Also, like yesterday, you have a notes page in your folder, as well as evaluation forms for each session. And if you did not grab one already, we can definitely get you one still at the sign-in table today. There's an overall forum eval form, and we would really, really like your feedback on that. Citadel has more recently adopted the faculty forums, and it's something that we love to do, and we've had a lot of fun planning. And it seems like there's a great turnout, and I know a lot of us, this is one of our favorite events of the year, but we really want to tailor it to what you all want to do and what we would like to see. So go back on the email form, tell us your honest thoughts, and then we'll definitely use that when we start planning the fall faculty forum. Any questions? Okay, I think we're ready then for Dr. Southard. Here. Oh, you did it. Yes. You're very still. Hi, everybody. I think I know most of you. You know me. I'm Ann Southard. I've been here since the dawn of time. I teach English and love to do that. And so this semester, I wanted to teach my students how to use Google Scholar. I routinely teach my students how to use the databases, and I wanted to do a better job with Google Scholar as well. So I'm glad we have two of our librarians here, and please feel free to jump in and correct and add as you see fit, because I know you guys know much more about this than I do. So the first thing about Google Scholar is that it does contain full text citations and or the articles. Sometimes you just get the citations because unlike our catalog, we don't have access to everything in Google Scholar. But it'll include things like books and conference papers, and you'll even get things like copyright and that kind of copyrights, those sorts of information. Uses web crawlers, just crawl specific types of open web sources. You'll get things like working papers or theses. You get theses, of course, in the catalog. You can get blog posts, so you have to kind of weigh whether or not those are really credible. The algorithm is proprietary, as you might expect, with Google. But from what I can tell, the criteria are the number of times that an article is cited in other research, so the popularity or the influence of that article, the ranking of the journal, and the location of the keyword, your keyword in the article. Like, is it in the title? Is it in early in the paper? Does it only occur once? That sort of thing. Pretty standard. Whoops, I think I went backwards. Sorry. So strengths and weaknesses of Google Scholar. I hope you can see this. I'm sorry, it's a little small, but this is a screenshot. And what's in bold, social media marketing, was my search term. I just did a very general search. You'll find that it covers a wide range of disciplines. It's particularly useful, I think, for the sciences, also computer science, medicine. It's really user-friendly. It does give you that cited by right here. It'll tell you right up front how many other articles have cited this particular article. That's useful. Once you open an article, you'll get a related articles feature, much as you will in our catalog from the library. You can get articles in PDF format. Sometimes that's the only way you get the article, and depending on your documentation format that your students are using, that can be a bit tricky to cite. You may have to go. I teach my students to go to MLA, the MLA portion of the Purdue OWL site to get an authoritative PDF format. The filters are pretty limited. Our own catalog has far more detailed filters, far more flexible filters. The filters here, as you can see, would be date, whether or not you want to sort by date or by relevance, and then you can tell I want a certain kind of article. And then if you're looking for patents, and maybe that would be useful. I'm not sure. You can do that. I like the create alert feature. So the student is looking for something, they can create an alert and they'll be emailed when new material comes up. In much, I think our catalog has this. You open an article, there's a more by this author feature. And I like the fact that you can create a user profile and then create your own personal library. So you can save particular articles to your own library. So those are some strengths as far as I'm concerned of Google Scholar. And I wanted to put this in here to show you I like this. This is the author information. I opened up an article and it tells me this about the author. She's an independent scholar, verified email. This is a list of some of her articles. And then over here, it shows me her citations, how many times she's been cited by other people. These are different years. I know you probably can't read this, but this is 2019 up through 2026. All her citations since 2021, just gives you a lot of information there. Some of her co-authors are down there at the bottom. So if your students are, and I really will stress this in the future to my students, you really have to work hard to ascertain, I think, that some of what you find on Google Scholar is credible, but this is an excellent way to approach that, the credibility of the author. So some of the weaknesses, there's no human oversight that I could find for the results. So the quality control is just kind of, you're hoping for the best. But you will get some less credible sources. You might get some fake citations. You might get some inclusion of predatory journals. That link right there, I won't go there in the interest of time. That's a link to a list of predatory journals. In other words, journals that will say, Dr. Southard, we would love to publish your amazing article. They don't care what I've written. And then they'll hit me with a $150 fee for some kind of processing. So those predatory journals can be included. And our databases use human review and reliance on peer-reviewed journals versus this automated crawler. So I feel more confident in the results I get from the catalog. As I said, there are fewer advanced search features, and you don't have access to a full text the way you do if you're searching our library. Of course, you can always ask our librarians to locate an article that you find on Google Scholar, but that you do not have access to. There's no filter for peer-reviewed articles, which to me in my field is a weakness. Very occasionally, I've only found this once. If you teach fences, I know Dr. Holmes teaches fences. If you teach fences by August Wilson, you're going to find that this very famous article by Susan Kuprinz, we have it in our article, our catalog, but in Google Scholar, there should be, if we have the link over here on the right-hand side, parallel with the citation of, say, at NWFSC or NWFSC full text, you click on that and get it. And I found that they didn't have that link, which really surprised me. It's the only time I've ever seen that happen. But I did find it, so I've included it. And again, I think the user is responsible for verifying the credibility of that article, more so than you would be if you were using an article from our catalog. Few more weaknesses, and I found this in our catalog as well. But here again, I did a search for August Wilson plays, fences, redlining, Pittsburgh. So there were all kinds of stuff at it to see what it would get me. And then I used the cite button here. So I did not open the article. And this is something I really want to stress to my students because documentation format is something that I teach. If I just use this cite button, I'm going to get an incomplete citation. There's nothing giving me the DOI number or a permalink here, which is what MLA format requires. In order to get that, I have to open the article and use that citation button. So that's just something that I only became aware of the more I used it. So something to teach students if you are concerned about documentation. Sometimes an article citation will be generated, particularly the hard sciences. We may not have an MLA format provided at all, which sometimes in Com 1 could be a problem because in Com 1 our students write papers about material from different kinds of disciplines. Lots of students who write about AI, for example, and so they might want to have a technical article from a computer science journal in MLA format, and that would be something then they'd have to go and figure out from Purdue how to put together. The PDF citations are, I would say the technical term for those is wonky. So something to work on there. If I'm teaching students to use this, I would, like you would in any kind of database, you start with a broad search and you narrow, use specific terms, quotation marks, and date ranges to narrow, just as you would with anything. The relevance and date range filters, use them as needed. If it's some sort of medical papers about some kind of medical development, probably date range is going to be particularly helpful. If it's something about literature, relevance is probably better. Boolean operators, that's standard. And then again, if you find an article and you can't access it within Google Scholar, then it might be available in our databases, in our catalog. And if failing that, we can use Interlibrary Loan, that tool that's on the library homepage, to request that our librarians try to get that article for us. And then I'm always telling students about this: read and cite the article, not the abstract. Yeah, right. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to work in a lesson. I got to find somebody who'll help develop it on how to read a scholarly article, because it's not happening. So when I tell you, when students find sources, I say, okay, if finding a source in Google Scholar, evaluate credibility by looking at how many times that article is cited by other writers, what the authors have written in addition to that. There's a metric menu that applies to science, medicine, and technology that rates the journal. Verify that the article exists, because this is a web crawler. So it is possible, I've not found this myself in my searches, but it is possible that you'll get a fake citation, because we all know that students have occasionally, let me use a passive voice. Occasionally, I will find a fake citation in a student paper. Not sure how I got there, but it's there. So sometimes you'll also find that potentially in Google Scholar. Verify that the citation is accurate. I have found a couple of small errors in that. Again, the web crawler, not human beings. Not that human beings don't make mistakes, but whatever's out there on the web and that meets the criteria is going to be provided in the results. And of course, verify that the article was not published in a predatory journal. And I provide my students, or I'm going to start providing my students with a list of what those predatory journals are. It's a very long list. So again, I teach students, if you don't use the citation that is on the results page, open the article. Here I've opened this article by Robert Lacey, and appeared in the Sorny Review, and get the citation from that screen. I find that when I'm teaching this material, that hands-on guided workshops, I have a really detailed worksheet, really is what it is. The students have to work their way through it. They use a search term for their own papers, and then they just work through all of my prompts. Try it with quotation marks. Try it without quotation marks. Try narrowing your search. Try and we talk about how to narrow a search versus how to broaden a search, and we do that kind of thing. And then I ask students to compare the search results from the catalog, our college catalog and databases, to the search in Google Scholar, and they won't be the same. So this, for me, is why this is a supplement to the catalog. And sometimes I'll find things in Google Scholar that I don't find in the catalog. I'll have more luck finding things in Google Scholar. That does happen sometimes. So I do think that it's a useful resource if we are cognizant of these sort of risks or caveats. Sorry, I keep going back. So I wanted to talk to you about this. So Google Scholar Labs is an generative AI-powered search tool. It has just been added it was added late last year to Google Scholar. And initially it was sort of a limited release. Some people could use it, but not everybody. Now it's available, but it's still beta. And so I played with that. I was excited about that. I thought this could really be helpful. It allows you to have natural language queries, so just as if you were talking versus the more traditional keyword search, up to 2,048 characters. You can then ask it follow-up questions it uses the same, it'll search the same database, same part of the web as Google Scholar. But what happens is there's a large language model like ChatGPT, for example. That's an example of a large language model that sort of sits on top of the Google Scholar web crawler, and it translates the user's query. So now you're relying on the AI to translate that query accurately into multiple queries. And then you get a results page, which gives you a summary, again, AI generated, that explains the source's relevance to your query. So it's like somebody comes back and says to you, oh, this really answers your question because it talks about X, Y, and Z. Again, it's great, but it is AI generated. It's possible that it's going to make mistakes. I was so excited about this, and then I was less excited when I started using it. My current session, so I had a student who researched this last semester in Com 1. How are college students in particular impacted by the housing shortage and high housing costs? So natural language, right? And this is sort of what I would consider maybe a social science / economics sort of question. And so I asked that. I got 10 results as opposed to, the thousands that you normally get. And these are some of the ones that I was given. And I've looked at these, and I'll show you something, I think, later. I've got a screenshot of this. But you can see that this one was published in 2021, which is fairly recent. That's good. Okay. This one was 2018. And this one is 2016, which is 10 years old. So the fact that I've got a 10-year-old article third in my results list, not great for something that's pretty topical. These are links to PDFs, so I can get those articles, but I'll get PDFs. I won't get the full documentation with that. If by any chance any of these were available at this college, I would see a NWFSC link out here. I could click on that and it would take me to the database that houses that article. So that's what this looks like. Notice there are no filters here. No filters. You can ask a follow-up question and try to filter it that way, but it's not giving you filters. Again, a proprietary algorithm, so the user doesn't know exactly how the results were selected or what choices the large language model made in the summary. The criterion seems to be, from what I can tell me if you know more than I do, please jump in. The criterion seems to be the algorithm's estimation of relevance. How relevant is this to the query? Versus looking at citation counts, journal rankings, and how often the search term occurs. And again, these things are generated by an LLM, which means, of course, that it's just trying to create language based on its ability to predict the next word of the sentence. And we all know that LLMs can hallucinate, can be inaccurate, can be great, but it's worth remembering that. So I wanted to just, again, I think these criteria matter. So the criteria for Google Scholar are very traditional, whereas the criteria for Scholar Labs is just, what does the AI think about this? Okay. Which I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying know that going in. And this person, I'm going to give you something that's a little bit, I hope, easier to read in a minute. But this person wrote some interesting stuff about Google Scholar and Google Scholar Labs. They go by this is a link. If you choose to look at this presentation later, this is a link to the effortless academic, just an oxymoron. Who knew that there could be an effortless academic, but there can be. Not me. But strengths of Google Labs, it'll narrow for you, but beyond the traditional keyword search through those follow-up questions, it can give you some very relevant results. Some of the searches I've done in there have been impressive in the results. It will find some more recent articles. That may be helpful depending on the topic the student's writing about. Recency might really matter. And these, because they're recent, they'll have lower citation count, something that's published in 2026, not going to be cited much because it's just published, but they'll still give you that if they think it's relevant. So that can be helpful. the labs will learn who you are, and it will learn what you like. And so it will start to refine searches based on your past searches and your preferences. Yields fewer results. It may go up to 300, whereas if you're using Google Scholar, you'll get up to 1,000. So it's not something that, I don't think our students necessarily do really, really comprehensive lit reviews, but if you were, this would not be the tool to use. And it gives you the same really helpful author information so that you can assess some credibility there as Google Scholar provides. So the weaknesses is it's still experimental and you have to have a Google login to use it. Assuming you're logged into Google, it's seamless. You get 5 searches a session, and then it starts a new session. It does lack filters. It certainly can miss some key studies. It will include some really outdated research. Like I said, if I'm looking for housing costs, college students, and I get something that's 10 years old, that may not be that helpful to me. Of course, it can hallucinate like any Gen AI tool. And it's really not a replacement for the deep dive that some of us might want to do. And you've got to I feel like users have to be the ones to take on the verification responsibility in terms of is the article real? Is the citation accurate? Is it a predatory journal? And what's the credibility of the author? So I did a same search, basically, in 3 different tools. Google Scholar Labs, Google Scholar, and our catalog. I searched for public beach access in Google Scholar and the catalog, and then I thought, well, let me use a natural language question since that's what it likes for Google Scholar Labs, and I said, how are coastal communities ensuring public beach access? This is another one of my students' favorite topics. And what I've given you is not the author and article. I've given you the journal, and I've given you the information about citations here. So you can see here at Google Scholar Labs, I got 2 very recent publications, 2025 and 2022. I got a William and Mary from 1996. And this 6 is red because it's wrong. Actually, 1995, when I opened the article up, and then 1978. Our students weren't alive in 1970. Some of you weren't alive in 1978. And then 1999. So that's what I got from a Google Scholar. Mixed results. The lab, sorry. Scholar gave me the same first result as I got from the catalog. These were the same article. Which is why they're yellow. And had 41 citations here. The next one you can see is older, but it has 118 citations. And all the way down here, this same article here and here in our catalog, just they have a different publisher, but I think Routledge is the imprint or Taylor Press is the imprint of Routledge. This goes one way or the other. It's the same article. Just slight difference in how the documentation is presented, citations presented. And then we get back to 1976 here at Google Scholar, a University of Florida PDF. Then when it was a catalog, these are my top 5 from the catalog. For some reason, this one showed up twice in the first and third positions. And then I had 2 that did not show up anywhere else. So you can see that the results do vary, which is why I'm going to definitely continue to teach this tool, use of this tool to my students, just really stressing to them that they have to beware, buyer beware, just know what you're looking at and how those results were generated in terms of web crawler versus human quality control and all of those cautions. And so my key takeaways when I was doing this research is it is a good supplement, I think. And then in italics, because it's important, expect to verify article quality and authenticity. So I ran through it because I was afraid I was going to run out of time, and I just about did. So if you guys have any questions?
I have more of a comment than a question.
Yes.
My students do scholarly article reviews where I love to have a little scholarly articles. If you wanted to collaborate on something, we could.
Yes, please. I would love to. It would be really, really helpful for my students, I think. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Yes, I am.
Are you finding more people in your own department using Google Scholar for the students when it comes to citation? Or is it just something specific in the classes?
I don't know that the people, I don't know. So I shared my initial lecture with Dr. Holmes, the beginning of the semester, I think, right, Dr. Holmes? And I haven't shared it with anybody else because I now think it's not as great as I thought it was then when I was so smug about it. And now I have to go back and redo it. So I'm not sure if you're in our department, social sciences, history, and English, is anybody using Google Scholar, teaching it to their students? Anybody?
I think they use both. We talk about both database
Both.
and Google Scholar, but I'll leave it up to them whichever one they want to
Yeah.
use. Okay, as long as you're.
I'm finding students prefer Google Scholar. I don't know if it's because they're comfortable with the interface here. It's just so accessible. They don't have to go to the library, but they seem to sort of gravitate towards that tool. And I want to do a better job of reminding them of that's fine, but know what the weaknesses are of that tool. Anything else? Yeah, April.
I just wanted to add a comment about the idea of the article critique partnership idea. I'm taking some classes for fun at UWF to get it for free. Yeah. And please teach how to do article critiques because that was not something I was taught when I was, I don't know, going to school, I guess. And we make the kids do them all the time, apparently. I'm doing so many article critiques now, and I wish I did in y'all's classes when I was before I got into these classes. So thank you for doing it.
Well, I'm not yet, but I'm going to get everything that Dr. Britton has and absolutely plagiarize it.
Yes.
Erin. And I just want to add that the library does have videos on how to read scholarly content. So we're going to say it's also made. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a quick explanation why it's potentially one. The repetition that you showed on the comparison found catalog, there were 2 instances of the same article. Sometimes that's because we have a